Hi, Nick Kirby here, joined by Mike Hart. Pleased to be with you today as the offseason treks along for Major League Baseball and more importantly, the Cincinnati Reds. Mike, we had a lot of news, not really a whole lot of like big, massive news, but there was a lot of interesting things last week. So far this week, it's been slow, but we know that can change pretty quick.
Yeah, especially with the GM meetings going on, you never know. They're all talking to each other. We might wake up tomorrow and a trade was made. So we'll see. We'll see for the rest of this week. I would put the over on half of a video that you're gonna have to make later on in this in this week.
Half of a video. All right. Well, we'll see about that. We do some cool stuff. Actually, Mark Sheldon, I'll go and mention it now, is going to be on the Stone Shield Show, 11:15 a.m. on Wednesday morning. So be sure to check that out live on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We're going to put that interview into the Chatterbox Reds podcast feed by Thursday morning as well. So that will be coming, and we'll have hopefully some more content as well this week. Coming up on today's show, we'll talk a little bit about some of the Reds news, some interesting tidbits. We'll run through all of that, including the Arizona Fall League, and then we will talk about four players that MLB Trade Rumors, their staff predicted. Their staff each predicted one of them would go to the Cincinnati Reds. So we're going to run through those four and see if they make sense for your Cincinnati Reds. But before we get to that, I know this time of year, everyone's always struggling to find gifts, and it's really hard if you're a dude trying to gift another dude a gift. I know, like, I'm trying to find my dad a gift. It's always really difficult. But I tell you what, holiday magic is made easy with Omaha Steaks. And if you're a procrastinator like me, you can place orders by 6 p.m. Eastern, and they ship the same day. And right now, during their Sizzle All the Way sale, you get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners, Chatterbox Reds listeners, get an extra $35 off with the promo code Chatterbox at checkout. That's not either or. 50% off site-wide plus the $35 off. The steaks are absolutely incredible. I absolutely love the gourmet hot dogs and the apple tartlets. That's a perfect holiday treat. I recently ordered their festive gift and free burger package. Mike, you had a fun experience with the gourmet dogs, huh?
Yeah, I ordered my Omaha steaks and it came in and I was making the big gourmet dogs and my son saw how large and great they looked and took it upon himself to cut it into manageable sizes and I came back to the counter with my son having taken a pair of scissors to try and attempt to cut all of the gourmet dogs in half for me. We had you know in pieces gourmet dogs still tasted great, but I was ready for my nice big hot dog there, and my son decided to, hey, you need to cut back a little bit and you're gonna only eat half of it.
That's heartbreaking because that's the best hot dog I've ever had in my entire life. Well, of course, save big with gourmet gifts and holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale and an extra $35 off. Use promo code Chatterbox at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code Chatterbox. All right. Well, Mike, let's get into some Reds offseason news. The first one, we've kind of heard a little bit about the budget. Charlie Goldsmith, the guy who typically puts out the best content in terms of what you can find, he is estimating the Reds have $15 to $20 million to spend. Feels a little bit less. I think we were hoping for more of that 30 range. It's hard to predict all that goes into every piece of that, but 15 to 20, it's not a lot. The Reds would have to be pretty creative to get some of the players we want.
Yeah, so the announcement initially was about the same as last year, and that was right at 119 million. Is I'm looking at the payroll for it and projected according to what they're expected to pay in like arbitration and things like that to um, some of these players like Brady Singer, Tyler Stevenson, things like that. It has it projected at about 96 million. So my initial thought was like 20 to 25 million. And so being at 20 to 15 obviously is disappointing, especially when, the person that I think most Reds fans want them to go get would take up that 20 million and some to get them to come and play because, that's how good Kyle Schwarber is. So that it feels like, yeah, as much as it pains you, Nick, Craig might be right that the Reds are not going to sign Kyle Schwarber unless there's a creativity basically sending out somebody or making a trade to clear up cap space that the thing is a lot of the things that we would be it's like some of these Hunter Greene trades or things like that we would be expecting major league talent back. And it's like, so it's, what we would clear off with Hunter Greene, we're probably not clearing off cap wise because we're still bringing on salary for major league talent. So I think it's going to be tough. It's interesting. Maybe we can discuss too about, what the mindset is for a team going into this potential lockout year. And I would imagine the Reds aren't going to be the only team that are going to be penny pinching for multiple reasons, right? Some of the smaller market teams are like, well, we're trying to save money because we're not going to have baseball. And I would imagine some of the larger teams are probably trying to save money because what happens if all of a sudden they spend this money and then out comes a salary cap and they all of a sudden have to pare things down? Like we have no idea what that's going to look like. So, my projection or my thought is that we're going to see a pretty depressed free agent market and depressed money wise. Maybe the free agents might be depressed too, but the money I think is going to be down, and more importantly, I think the years are going to be down. We're going to see a ton of 1-year deals because it's just like, all right, we'll pay you now, and we won't be on the books for whatever happens after 2026.
Seems like if you're a free agent, you want at least 2 years. So at least, when you come back from the lockout, you're not looking for a deal at the last minute because that's going to be chaos. You might remember before,
Yeah.
the players, there was this like rush to sign players before the lockout that we knew was coming. There was like it was a really fun like free agency week in, I guess that was 2021, November, early December, or somewhere around there, right before it locked out. There was like this crazy week of crazy spending, and then everyone was locked out and you can't talk to anyone the whole time. It's crazy. Like even if you're a team broadcaster, you're not allowed to go on a podcast during that time because you are locked out from speaking. And so, yeah, that'd be interesting. I would think, man, I'd be pushing for that, but they might take a significant cut to do that. You kind of hope, Mike, when you see this 15 to 20 million, you kind of hope it's like when you take your kids to the store and you say, we have $10. You have $10 as your budget, and and they go and they see that transformer, and look, it's $13.99. It's a little more, but look, it's better than getting a couple crappy toys that is going to last a week. Go out and spend the $13.99. Bring Kyle Schwarber home, and don't get a bunch of toys that are going to be thrown in the trash in 2 weeks. That's my pitch. Reds ownership.
I was also thinking about the last Cincinnati kid who was a superstar that the Reds brought in to, come in and be a part of the franchise, Ken Griffey Jr., right? And part of, what came there was that he had, I think, looking at his contract, it was like 9 years, 160 million, but they deferred a ton of that money. I know that's kind of the hot button topic with how much it's being done by the Dodgers and things like that, but it doesn't seem to be something that the Reds are often willing to do, but they were willing to do it in order to make sure that they could land their hometown guy to come and be a part of their team. So he in fact was paid all the way till 2024. He received a $3.5 million from the Reds in 2024. That's how long Ken Griffey Jr.'s salary was deferred. So maybe that's a way that they're able to work within the budgets of this year while still be able to, in all, provide Kyle Schwarber with the amount of money that he deserves based on his free agency or would command from other teams. You bring him in, he retires as a Red. He is first ballot Reds Hall of Famer. and then he's around and can you pay him into the future, and that's how you're able to offset costs. So I don't know, maybe that's an idea that that the Reds don't often do, but the one exception is something that we see a lot of parallels with.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. There's that account on Twitter. I don't love to give these accounts like a ton of notoriety because I don't want to speculate. Like there's it's supposed to be an executive burner account from MLB exec. I'm not speculating if it's accurate or not, but they did say Reds owner Bob Castellini is entering his age 84 season. Son Phil, now CEO. When the elder Castellini passes, I don't love saying this, the organization will be sold for at least 1.5 billion. That's, I guess, the way he's speculating. So why not offer hometown kid Kyle Schwarber a deal he can't turn down? Structure it with heavy deferred money the next ownership group will pay. Yeah, I mean, I think you don't want to have a ton of contracts hanging if you did sell the team, but I don't think like one Kyle Schwarber is going to be like, yeah, you know what, we're going to pass on buying this Major League Baseball team because you have a $10 or $15 million deferred. But yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, and it seems like if there was ever, I understand like you can't do that all the time, but man, it just feels like if there was ever a time for the Reds, it would be like right now when you have this really, really incredible pitching staff that just desperately needs that one big, massive bat. If now's not the time, then I guess when is would be my question.
Yeah, great point. I'd love it. Uh, you know, maybe if we talk about it on every Red show for the whole postseason, the word will get out that they should do it. Maybe that should.
I think the word is out that I want Kyle Schwarber at this point. But yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. And look, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm not going to sit and cry about it all off season. But I do think it would be a massive missed opportunity, and hopefully not one we'd look back in 5 years and go, man, Reds had a chance to go at a big bat and they didn't do it, and this team just never got to anywhere. Moving along, Reds have talked to Spencer Steer about moving all around back to the outfield, mostly possible second base. Nothing set in stone. Obviously, the Reds like what he did at first base. I love this idea. Steers is just an interesting player because yes, he was really good defensively at first base, but he didn't hit well enough to be a first baseman. So you're like kind of stuck in this weird conundrum. So for the Reds, this is how I would view it, Mike, and I'm curious your thoughts. I'd view it as we need to get a higher upside bat at first base, but that bat has to produce. If Sal Stewart doesn't produce, then Spencer Steer just plays first base every day because you're going to have the better defense. CES is another candidate that can play first base, but if he doesn't produce, there just can't be a long lease there at first base. That's how I kind of view it. And obviously, I think like Steer out in the outfield is especially maybe a platoon role with Benson. I think would be really great in left field. And when you say platoon role with Benson, I still think he probably ends up starting 70-80% of the time in some capacity as a guy that can move around the field because injuries will happen. But I love this idea. I love that the Reds just aren't going into 2026, at least from the front office standpoint, with Spencer Steer penciled in as the everyday first baseman because he frankly just didn't hit well enough over the course of not just the last year, the last 2 years.
Yeah. And one thing that I think was kind of overlooked a little bit, I think you might have mentioned it at some point. Spencer Steer, I think by the end of the year, really started hitting left-handed pitching a lot better, which was, really where I think he made his bread and he made his way on this team because of his ability to do that in 2020.
Made his way to the big leagues with his
Yeah.
ability to hit left-handed pitching.
Right. So, if that is able to come back around to where we think is level, which is, somebody that can hit lefties well, I think there absolutely is a spot. I don't love his defense in the outfield. I also think whenever you're moving guys around like that, it's tough. But we also saw just like a drastic improvement from him at first base. Now, obviously, first base and outfield, two different things, right? But who's to say if we say, hey, we want you to continue to get better at outfield, we don't see an improvement out there in left field. So I love having somebody that you can have the flexibility to do this. I think of Ben Zobrist on those 2020 or 2016 Cubs teams, right? You could put him wherever on the infield and maybe even, in the outfield, and you can feel comfortable about him being there. I don't, feeling comfortable in left field. is maybe not something that I would feel at the moment, but I could get there with Spencer Steer. So I like having that chess piece to move around. I think it makes things easier for giving people days off, which Francona has been pretty vocal about. Hey, maybe I needed to do a little bit more of that this year. So having that flexibility, I think, is something that is a very valuable asset to this team.
Am I reading too much into this, Mike? When I see the words Steer possibly playing second base, my head goes, that means Gavin Lux probably isn't on the Cincinnati Reds in 2026. Am I reading
Yeah.
too much, or is that a pretty big hint right there?
Yeah, maybe. That's I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, maybe he's, all of a sudden becomes the backup second baseman if a certain light hitting DH is moved.
Moving along, Reds lost assistant pitching coach Simon Matthews to the Nats, who will be the Nationals' new pitching coach. My only takeaway from this is good. I mean, this is good that your coaches are sought to be promoted on other teams. I don't really know a whole lot about Simon Matthews, but obviously the Reds pitching with Derek Johnson has been elite. And shout out to Simon Matthews. Best of luck in Washington.
Yeah, I believe the Phillies pitching coach also used to be a Reds
Caleb
assistant
Cotham.
pitching coach, Caleb Cotham. So I think there's a pipeline that people are realizing. Hey, the Reds and if you really look at it, the Reds have turned into a very good organization for developing pitching. We've basically been able to, with the exception of some heavy injury laden seasons, just put together under Derek Johnson incredible pitching staffs that has carried terrible offensive teams. So, kudos to them. I'm glad that I hope that the institutional knowledge is going to be able to next man up whoever the next assistant pitching coach is. But yeah, it's good to see somebody like that go and get an opportunity to help. And I'm glad it's not somebody in the NL Central.
And they got their work cut off for them this year because I think they're going to need a lot of on-the-fly bullpen pitching development in 2026 for this team to have success, because they're not going to be able to spend enough if they have 15 to 20 million to replace what they've lost in the bullpen. Terry Francona finishes second in the NL Manager of the Year voting. Francona got two first place votes coming from Pittsburgh and Miami. The two Cincinnati writers, Jason Williams, who I think was a politics writer that shifted over to baseball recently. I know he wrote for sports in the past. And Gary Schatz, is that how you say his name? Both voted Tito number 2 behind Murphy. Gary S., that's what we're going to call him. He's an AP writer who wrote 6 Reds articles in 2025, but got a NL Manager of the Year vote. He has been a freelance AP writer since 1992 and also a Xavier stat guy since 1991. So shout out to you, Gary, but kind of just fascinating, that guy that I had never heard of. I don't know if you had, Mike.
No.
We followed the Cincinnati Reds on a non-healthy basis, gets a vote for a major award.
Yeah, wrote just enough to stay in the BBWA or whatever, and then they just like pass it around per sports market. That's crazy. But hey, I don't know. Manager of the Year to me is it's like it's I don't know, it's a popularity contest. I don't think they basically say, okay, who is a likable guy that their team overperformed? And I guess Terry Francona falls right in that. Their team overperformed. Obviously, Pat Murphy's team overperformed much better than Terry Francona. But, while I always like it when Reds get some sort of national recognition because I feel like it doesn't happen very often. Good for Tito. I'm glad. But as we can see from the Reds voting base, I'm not sure how locked into all 162 every writer is. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know anything about Gary S. Maybe he follows maybe he tunes into the post game shows every night just to
maybe he's listening right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gary.
Yeah. Sorry, Gary. We do. Maybe you are tuned in. I just you'd think that the people voting on this are the people that are in the clubhouse every road trip.
Yeah, I'm stunned that Murphy wasn't unanimous. Like, if there was ever a Manager of the Year that should have been unanimous, like, how was Pat Murphy not? Pat Murphy first, Francona second, Rob Thompson third, Craig Counsell fourth, Clayton McCullough fifth, Terry Lavello, and Mike Schilt each got votes. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who would you have had in your top three?
Somebody who's not even on this list that I was thinking of is like, oh yeah, you know, who I would love to see on this list would be Carlos Mendoza, because I guarantee the Reds don't make the playoffs if Carlos Mendoza doesn't just absolutely steer that New York Mets ship right into a coral reef. Man, it was great. I think he should have gotten votes just for what he was able to do for the Reds.
Are you going to give me a serious answer? One,
Um,
two, three.
yeah. Um, let's see. I think Pat Murphy very clearly should have won. He's number one. The thing is, you know, when it comes to all these other guys, it's just like second, the Phillies. I think you can ask any Phillies fans, they underperformed this year. The Cubs, they underperformed this year. Obviously they made it back to the playoffs. The Marlins overperformed, but that was a team that was pretty bad. Just like it didn't have much life in it for you. Terry Lavello, they didn't make the playoffs, and Mike Schilt is no longer the manager of the Padres. So it's like, kind of, where are the votes going if it's not going to Terry? So I think I'd probably still have him in my top three. I like Clayton McCullough because I think the hand that he was dealt in Miami was quite bad, and the fact that they were in it in the last week of the year. And thank you very much for beating the Mets in the final game of the year to secure the Reds playoff berth. So yes, I think I would have Terry in there. Maybe let's go Clayton McCullough for the Marlins 2 and Terry Francona 3. That's my 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm so Pat Murphy just like is so far ahead of everyone. It's not even close. I would with you. I would have Clayton McCullough second. I think what he did was far more impressive than anyone else. And remember, this is a regular season award. The Dodgers only won 93 games, and only 93 games. That's not a lot of wins for the amount of money that was spent on that team. Um, I for third, I would not give it to Francona. Maybe I'm just a hater. I would not. I went between Rob Thompson and Craig Counsell. Yes, I think the Phillies were an interesting case. They did still win 96 games. I actually think I'd have Craig Counsell third. I mean, the Cubs won 92 games. I think that kind of gets overshadowed just because of how incredible the Brewer season is. Remember, they lost Justin Steele like the first week of the season. They dealt with a lot of injuries. I actually think I'd have Craig Counsell third. I think that it's either him or Thompson. That would be what I vote. But it's an incredibly subjective award, and this was not a good year. Like Mike Schilt gets fired, as you mentioned. Torey Lovella, they did play really well in the second half. Remember, they sold off their entire team, and they were in the playoff race into the final week and a half of the season. So it was an interesting year. I think that's how I would go.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to remember is the reason why we are down on Francona is because we watched every single game of his and, really didn't agree with how he managed the X and O's in certain situations, his lack of wanting to play certain players over others, maybe even how he handled certain parts of the media and things like that. There's a whole video about how you feel about that. We didn't watch any of these other teams enough to know, to be able to have that type of feel on whether Rob Thompson, had his super, talented team, but was, not making very good platoon split decisions as well. So I think that's part of what makes this tough. It's just like the reason why we are skeptical about Terry Francona is the reason why, we also probably don't know fully for some of these other guys because we're just so locked in on ours. And I would imagine the Marlins and the Pirates writer that gave him first place, they were like, we just see a team that was, under 500 make it to the playoffs for the first time. And they got this new manager who's a great quote. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like from the outside, it seems like, yeah, he did a good job, even though we who watched every game disagreed with some of his decisions that he made.
Reds went 3-12 in extra inning games. The Marlins went 10-4 over the course of the season.
I think they're undefeated for a long time too. Like I think they were like I think it was like 9-0 until they lost one or something like that.
Let's move on to something less fun. Hunter Greene trade rumors. Boy, is this becoming a saga, Mike. The latest, Bob Nightingale. Oh, I don't have the quote in front of me. I'm going to skip Bob while I pull that up. Charlie Goldsmith said the rumors were overblown, trade not likely. Terry Francona downplayed the likelihood on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. Shout out to them. I went on their show once. Downplayed the likelihood of it. Basically, saying he doesn't think it's going to happen. Bob Nightingale said, quote, despite their recent public denials, they still plan to listen to offers for Greene. Yet, unless they're completely overwhelmed and receive a return that will help them not only now, but in the future, they'll keep him. So that's, I think, Bob's reporting, in my opinion, feels like the most spot on. That I think they are publicly denying it, but I think there's too much smoke for them not to be at least fielding calls on this. But I think if they're not overwhelmed, they're going to keep him. I think that's exactly probably how it is. That's how I read this.
Yeah, this actually, I'm going to do a cross-sport comparison for you there, Nick. This to me feels like the Bengals saying, yes, Trey Hendrickson is available to trade. And then being like, we will only trade him for a first-round pick. So while it can be true that, yes, they are listening to offers for Trey Hendrickson, it was overblown whether they were going to trade him because it was not likely going to happen because nobody was going to meet their asking price. So I think in the same way, it can be, yeah, the Reds are listening, but Charlie may be reading between the lines here and said, I know what their asking price is, and I know ish what their asking price is, and it's highly unlikely because there isn't a team out there that's going to provide something like that. So I think there's a way in which both of those jive. I don't think it's completely conflicting. It's just, but I think you're right. I think it makes sense. It makes sense for a team like the Reds to always be open to offers because maybe somebody does blow you away. But I think it's also right that you would keep your ace who is, dramatically underpaid and under contract for a couple more years, that you would keep that price high because that's somebody that for a small market team can really help you propel you into not only making it to the playoffs, but doing something in the playoffs. So I think that's kind of where I fall on this issue.
All right. Arizona Fall League action. The Reds had 4 players selected to the Fall Stars game. That was on Sunday. Cam Collier, he had a 113-mile-per-hour single in his first at bat. Overall, Collier hitting 221, does have a 368 on-base percentage in the AFL. Leo Balcazar, he walked and reached on an air. Balcazar has really cooled off 0 for 15 over his last 7 days, but it has been very impressive still, despite that, hitting 277, 340 on-base percentage. Alfredo Duno played the game. He drew a walk, which is what he does. Duno's last regular Arizona Fall League game, though, went 3 for 4 with a double and a triple. So nice to see him finish near strong. Rhett Lauder selected, but not pitching. He has been shut down there. Reds said they've seen enough. They mission accomplished was the I believe the quote from Brad Meter about Rhett Lauder. Trevor Kunsel was not an all-star, but he's had a very impressive Arizona Fall League, especially for a guy who only has 1 pro season under his belt. 15 strikeouts in 7 2/3 innings. Has walked 6, gave 3 runs, but Trevor Kunsel, I think a guy to keep keep an eye on. I don't think it's crazy to think that Kunsel, if things go right for him, could sneak his way onto the big league roster in 2026. Now, the Reds team, trying to say this right, I looked up the pronunciation guide, Mike. Let's see if Google didn't lie to me. The Peoria Javelinas. I had it, and
Javelinas.
It's ha, but it's like a deep
J.
Yeah. Javelinas. The Peoria Javelinas. Well, I'm anyways, the Reds affiliate, they play an elimination playoff game at 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday. It's probably when you're listening to this. That's November 12th. If they win that single elimination game, then they move to a semifinal game on Thursday. And then if they win that, they move to the Arizona Fall League Championship Sunday, 8 p.m. That is on MLB Network. The other games are just streaming on MLB.com and a stream that's not very lovely. But Arizona Fall League wrapping up. We'll maybe do something to commemorate the Arizona Fall League season next week. Any thoughts on the Arizona Fall League, guys, Mike?
No, glad to see Rhett Lauder, mission accomplished. He got out of there with no injury. And, it seemed like there was some rust, but the velocity was back and, feels good. I feel good about him coming into next year, being able to be a contributor on this team.
All right. Well, before we get to the 4 players that MLB Trade Rumors says the Reds might just pick up, quick word from our sponsors. Deep South Commodities is a proud supporter of Chatterbox Reds and our Deep Drive of the Day, and DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks as always to our friends at DSC. And we also want to remind you that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health. Whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between, it's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay. All right, Mike, on Thursday of last week, MLB Trade Rumors published its annual top 50 free agents with predictions article, and 4 players were selected, each by one person. Now, they're not saying the Reds are going to sign all 4 of these players. They had 4 guys. They each picked one Red to be signed. Those are Pete Alonso, Josh Naylor, Eugenio Suarez, and Emilio Pagan. So we're going to run through each of those players. We'll start off with Pete Alonso. Their one writer predicted 4 years, $110 million. That's a $27.5 million AAV. That feels pretty low for Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, because he took the kind of the short deal to opt out of, and I think he got a higher AAV than even that. And then I think he had a great season. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got paid as well as a first baseman, kind of setting the bar nice and high. Now, will I think he gets that much? No, because he's older and not as good. But, whenever you set the bar that high, I would imagine he's getting more than that. And to be honest, maybe they did it because they think the Reds, I don't know. 27.5 million is, more and then some from what we just reported the budget is for adding. So it does seem low. But I guess I'm not sure where we're going to stand with the lockout. I told you, I think it might depress some salary here a little bit, but yeah, I would be surprised if he only gets that much in AAV in what he got and what he returned, what his ultimate signing is. Now, if in whatever world we're in here that he does sign with the Reds, I do like, having a right-handed bat that has power to all fields, especially and even though he plays first base where, we're already kind of seeing a log jam, is like he feels like the type of person that you can, figure stuff out. And another underrated part about Pete Alonso, obviously we know about how good a hitter is, very, very good at scooping the ball. I think has led the league in scoops for the past 2 or 3 years. And part of that is Francisco Lindor loves throwing the little bounce pass to him. But that's not a bad thing when you have Ellie De La Cruz throwing to you. And so it's I think there's a lot of different ways in which I think he could fit into the Reds first base this season. Now, do I think of the 3 or 4 that you labeled, this to me was the least likely. I know people like to predict it to the like putting the Reds in there, but I just really don't see a world in which Pete Alonso is able to be, we're able to have the money or that he picks the Reds.
I see a world where if the Reds could actually get him for 4 years, 110 billion, that's the kind of move that ownership that we're talking about maybe lets them push it. I think maybe they would for that. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid too much there. It just seems crazy low for me. If Spencer Steer and Pete Alonso could combine forces, they'd be an elite first baseman because Pete Alonso, while he's good at scooping, is atrocious at everything else. He was -9 outs above average, literally terrible. I remember seeing a video talking about how the reason the Mets may not resign him is because they were worried about his defense at first base. So, I mean,
Has a
yes,
hard
it's
time throwing too. Like
yes,
there's a bunch of video compilations of him trying to throw to home plate, and it's not good.
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, like obviously it's nice to have a guy that can play first base, and Schwarber obviously can't do anything other than DH. But I'm not sure how much value Pete Alonso really has overall as a fielder. But I will say this: like Pete Alonso is right there with Kyle Schwarber in terms of like the fan excitement it would bring. I mean, you signed Pete Alonso. I don't think anyone's going to really care what and no casual fan is going to care what the Reds do the rest of the offseason. They're like, they signed Pete Alonso, wins opening day, let's buy some tickets. I mean, it would be that kind of move. Um, that's crazy low to me, but I will say MLB Trade Rumors, they're the gold standard for this kind of stuff. So if they're saying 4 years, 110, not saying take it to the bank, but I'm saying they have some actual real reasoning for that. They've been right more than wrong, and certainly right more than a lot of other sites. So interesting nonetheless. Shall I move along?
Yeah.
I love this next one. Josh Naylor, 5 years, 90 million. I love this. This will be an $18 million AAV. I didn't think I thought Naylor would probably get a higher AAV than that. But man, he's a really, really good hitter. Mike has a really good track record. I know there's some concerns about his fitness and all that sort of stuff. But he was only 28 years old. He's way younger than like all these other free agents. So it's not like you're signing a guy that's on the other side of 40s or of 30, not 40. So you're not signing a guy deep into his mid 30s or anything like that. I mean, 5 years, he would be what, 29, 30, they're one of the 33 at the end of that. So not long at all. This to me, man, feels like this would be the best of these four.
Yeah, 18 mil or AAV also fits in that combo that we're talking about. It's very interesting too because I think a lot of these guys, with Naylor and potentially Alonso too, right? It may be a better fit for them just say, hey, will you just be our DH? And I think that I guess I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that Naylor would be more willing to be something like, hey, I'm just gonna DH, every day type thing. Or I'm assuming that face makes me think you're looking at his defensive numbers, and
He's
they're not bad.
way better than people think.
Yeah.
Uh, he was +2 outs above average in 2025. 2024, he was +1. 2023, he was +4 at first base. 2021, +1. So as a first baseman, he's been a solid defender. He's not like super athletic, obviously, but if you watch him, he makes a lot of really good plays at first base. Obviously, he's not gonna have the range or anything like that. But I think he gets miscast. I think that people think Pete Alonso's a way better defensive first baseman than he is because of his reputation. And the old Naylor must suck at first base. It's actually the opposite in terms of the numbers. So I don't know, the 18 million AAV. I mean, yes, does a deal like that for 5 years, does it have the risk of being bad the last couple? Yeah, sure. But it's not a crazy risk. I mean, it's not, you're on the right side of 20 million. So to me, this is the one that I look at and I go, that fits, like you said, exactly maybe where the Reds are at. And I know when I talked with Craig last week, Um, I personally say if this is all you have to spend, just go get a legit hitter. And if you have to have scrap heaps on the bullpen, that's fine. You can't be throwing $5 million towards a reliever and then getting bottom of the barrel hitters. I would rather roll with it and hope that you can strike gold with relievers because they're just way more volatile than any of these other hitters we're talking about.
Yeah, last year 112 WRC plus versus lefties. He obviously is left-handed, and a 135 WRC plus against righties. So being able to have somebody for less than 20 million that is going to be able to like be above average hitter for both righties and lefties is, I think, huge. And, to me, Josh Naylor falls in, the Moneyball island of misfit toys, right? You look at Josh Naylor and you're like, that's not a good baseball player, but if you look at what he's been able to do, I think, yeah, he could be somebody that genuinely really helps this team. Yeah. And frankly, I was also pretty shocked that this was something, this was this amount of money that was projected seemed low to me as well. And you got to remember too, there's probably, if it's a 5-year, $90 million contract, there's probably opt-outs in there. Something that we saw with Nick Castellanos, we saw with Mike Moustakas, things like that, where it's like there's going to be, I would imagine, I guess I don't know for sure, but I would imagine there would be something in there where, he outplays 18 million a year and he then says, all right, I'm going to free agency after 2 years. And then the Reds could throw him a qualifying offer. He could deny that qualifying offer and, first round comp pick. So it's, I think that there's a lot of ways in which I think that this could work well for the Reds and would be, I don't think I'd be like Kyle Schwarber excited about it, but I would be excited that they went out and tried to do something to address the glaring need that the Reds have. And that's a big power bat.
Yeah. If Sal Stewart doesn't work at first base, I think we have all the reason to hope and believe that it will. But if it doesn't, just Josh Naylor makes a lot of sense. Now, if you really believe in Stewart, he's going to be the first baseman, then just going out and getting the Schwarber makes sense. But there's a world where Naylor is more impactful over 4 years than Schwarber if Sal Stewart can't play first base, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm about Mike, to be honest with you, he can have opt-outs after every single year. I don't care. Like, would you sign Josh Naylor to a 1 year, $18 million deal? Or would you sign him to 4? No, I would take the one. That's great. And if he outperforms that, well, guess what? That means he's going to he's going to decline the qualifying offer because he's not going to decline it. So he could take a $22 million 1 year deal, right? So you're going to get a draft pick. I mean, that is the perfect world. What happened with Nick Castellanos was a dream scenario for the Cincinnati Reds. And so, yeah, I know opt-outs. Yeah, you can have all the opt-outs you want. Like, it doesn't.
Then the Reds don't have to deal with a potential fall off in years 4 and 5 there, right? We got the best out of Nick Castellanos, and then he went to the Phillies, and the rest is
now
history.
They're trying to salary dump him. Yeah. One last thing on Naylor, just to maybe give a little bit more excitement about him. He gets a massive boost at Great American Ballpark. I'll read through this. So 2025, he hit 20 home runs. StatCast says 27 at GBP. How about 2024? He hit 31. That bumps up to 37. 23. How about he hit 17 home runs? That bumps up to 24. And back in 2021, or 2022, sorry, he hit 20 home runs. They bump him up to 26. So he get a pretty substantial boost. I mean, you're looking at probably a guy, he's been a little up and down, but you're looking at least 25 to 30, I think, is what you'd expect. And that would be obviously a huge boost for the Reds. But that's 25 to 30 home runs with a guy with a 350 plus on base percentage too. Yeah. And that plays good defense.
And one more thing to point out too, right? Obviously familiarity with Tito and Chris Valaika. So,
Chris Valaika didn't ruin him either.
Yeah. So
hit his career high, 30 home runs. He hasn't done it.
Yeah, we have proof that Josh Naylor with Chris Valaika as a hitting coach can hit over 30 home runs.
Yeah.
So it's you know, you don't know how much that plays into it, but Tito loves his guys. And so I don't know if Josh Naylor was his guy or not, but you know, it had a lot of success under Francona in Cleveland. That may have something to do with it as well.
If you look this up, how many stolen bases did Josh Naylor have?
Oh, dude, they were talking about it in the playoffs. The dude, I think he went 25 for 25 after he got traded to the Mariners. Like he's like statistically like in the 5th or 6th percentile.
3rd percentile in sprint speed and stole 30 bases.
Yeah.
How is this even possible?
Yeah. He's basically so slow that no one was paying attention to him, that he was just taking bases.
So this is like the dream. This is like the highest IQ base runner on the planet, right?
It's that him and Juan Soto, right?
Crazy. I just looked at it. I wasn't even paying attention to the other stats. I just looked at it. Saw that 30 he stole more than 10 in a season. So I'm assuming there'll be a much more emphasis on hey, make sure you watch this guy over there next year. But he kept getting away with it. So wow,
yeah,
that's wild.
Picking the right spot to go, man, and not holding him on apparently.
The next one, our old friend. This one feels a little high to me. Eugenio Suarez, 3 years, $63 million. Obviously, Suarez coming off a pretty big power season when he hit 49 home runs. But 3 years, $63 million, 21 AAV. Now, it's only 3 years, though. That's the big thing, is that 3 years and you're done. So you're not as worried. But that's still a lot given his age. I'm not against it, but I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder who the Reds are bidding against in this one, though. You know what I mean?
Yankees.
It's just really like so. I guess I don't know specifically who the Yankees need, but they need outfielders.
McMahon.
Yeah, and they're going to need to replace either Cody Bellinger or Trent Grisham or both, right? So in my mind, like infield wise, they've got third base is there's Jazz Chisholm and there's Ryan McMahon. So unless they're just like come and play full DH, but then they have Giancarlo Stanton for that. So I guess my point is I feel like there would be less suitors for Eugenio Suarez, which
Angels, Mariners are some of the top ones.
Yeah.
That I'm seeing. Yeah.
And obviously the Mariners love. I think every team that he's played for, they've loved him. The fan base loves him, even though he somehow strikes out a ton, but he's just such a likable guy. So I could see potentially going against the Mariners, and who knows with the Angels, right? They, theoretically they still have Rendon there, but like he doesn't show any interest in wanting to actually play baseball. So you never know who they would be. I guess my thought is you're right. It does seem high because to me it feels like the amount of teams that they would be bidding against would be a lot less for that. But the main difference between Suarez and Naylor is power, right? 49 home runs versus 25 home runs is like you pay. There's a premium for power, and that's part of the reason why I don't think the Reds get very many power hitters, and why Josh Naylor may be a better fit because it's like power on the cheap, more power than what we had on the cheaper. But yeah, if you want somebody that hits the ball over the fence, 49 home runs with the Reds in 2019, and then besides 2020 has hit 33 and 21, 33 and 22, 22 and 23, but 30 and 24 and 49 and 25. It's like that's something that you pay for, you need to pay for. So yeah, I think it is a little high, but I think that's just the reality of where the market may be.
-6 outs above average at third base. Obviously, the Reds have Brian Hayes, so you would have to.
He's just
you'd be
DH.
signing Suarez to be a DH, maybe plays first base. He seems like a guy that would profile well as being able to transition to first base pretty well. And then would play third base and if Hayes got hurt. But yeah, I mean the MLB trade rumors, they have two guys predicted the Reds. This one had the Red Sox and the Athletics. So Suarez's market will be interesting. The one thing with Suarez, I think also is one thing I like about him and Schwarber is I think there's an actual chance of not having to overpay, not having to pay more than the Yankees or a team you're bidding with. I think Suarez might take the Reds if the Reds offer the same as someone else. I think he might take the Reds as he wants to come back and finish his career here. And for like Suarez, I mean, a guy that I think should already be a Reds Hall of Famer. He would like kind of cement that legacy and certainly and kind of have a bookend career. So I don't know Suarez, but I mean, it seemed like it didn't seem like there was any hard feelings when he came back to play against the Reds. It seemed like he had that. So you have that going for him.
Yeah. Can't believe we got him for Alfredo Simon. That was just the steal of the century there.
Yeah.
Big pasta.
They made that and Dan Straley or Luis Castillo for Dan Straley.
Yeah.
Man, they made some wild moves. Dick Williams, shout out. The last one, old friend Emilio Pagan, 2 years, $16 million, $8 million AAV. I don't know. The every budget thing that I see is just more. I'm out on this. It just feels like $8 million on a reliever. And yes, I know Pagan's valuable, and that's I think a pretty fair price for him. It's just hard to justify spending that much money on a reliever that could revert back to the same reliever most people didn't really love in 2024.
Yeah, I think if the Reds end up signing Pagan, this offseason has gone wildly off the rails. We struck out on so many things that it's just like, well, all right, we weren't able to get a hitter, so we're going to try to double down on pitching. I think that's the pathway that I see for the Reds re-signing Pagan. But I'm with you. If they're going to get a hitter, which all indications are saying that that's what they want to do, and they want to go do more than Austin Hayes for $5 million like they did last year. Yeah, I don't see how that fits in, especially with only 15 to 20 million to spend. I like the guy. I think he was, he had some pretty high profile screw ups, but overall throughout the year, for the most part, was great for the Reds. So, people forget that he pitched like 4 days in a row down the stretch. He was just like on fumes. It's just like I'm going out here in this playoff push to try to get us over the finish line when Lodolo gets hurt and we have to do a bullpen game. And I thought that was awesome and that was real admirable. And we'll look fondly back on Emilio Pagan's time on the Reds, or in 2025 at least.
Yeah, he had an incredible year for the Reds and a huge part of the Reds' success in 2025. You can't take that away from him, especially. I mean, he wasn't penciled in as even a setup guy, I think, going into the season, and ended up being a really almost a borderline all-star closer. I just don't think that makes sense. I think you make a great point that it feels like it would be an 11th hour. It feels like it'd be really shocked if the Reds signed Pagan before like the end of January. Like it would have to be, all right, we struck out on everything. We've tried every trade and there's just nothing there that makes sense for us. We have some money to spend. And like, I guess some people would poo-poo on that, but if you get to that point, like at least get a valuable player and Pagan would be a valuable player. I don't love that, but as a plan D, I don't think it's a terrible thing. I just, that would, not my top of my priorities.
2 years, 16 million is not an untradeable contract either. I don't, I don't want to think about it as the Reds are sellers at the deadline in 26, but like, I would imagine that's part of the contingency that they're thinking about when handing out these contracts as well. So, if the Reds are at the point where, hey, maybe we need to sell, that's a reasonable contract that somebody needing bullpen help, and everyone always needs bullpen help at the deadline, would be willing to, cough up some capital for.
All right. So my like final takeaway here is I think Naylor makes the most sense out of those four. I think Pete Alonso would obviously be the most attractive. I just don't like see that happening. Um, I think Naylor for me would probably be the combination of the most realistic and the most attractive for me. Where are you at?
No, I agree. I think the three hitters, I would obviously, if they were to sign it, I would be happy that we are going for it and doing something. And if we signed it for anything around what these AAVs are predicting, then I think that would be great. Emilio Pagan, if we sign him, I think there is a realistic pathway in which we do. If we did, I think we're going to be pretty disappointed with what the Reds post offseason was this winter.
Well, plenty of offseason still to come, Mike. The general managers meeting, they have gotten underway. They are November 10th through 13th. Some of the quotes you heard was from Nick Kroll down there. So we will certainly keep our eyes peeled and see if anything else comes up from that. The Rule 5 protection, that's coming up quick, November 18th. Players like Hector Rodriguez, Edwin Arroyo, Leo Balcazar, kind of headline the list. Jose Franco's already been added to the 40-man roster. He was another one as well. The non-tender deadline, November 21st. Will the Reds non-tender Sam Moll? Will they be really bold and non-tender Gavin Lux? That's something to watch. The winter meetings, December 7th through 10th. And then Reds Fest coming up in January. So we'll continue to keep our eyes peeled, and we'll come on when there's anything else. As mentioned at the beginning, Mark Sheldon will be live on the Stone Shield Show, 11:15 a.m. on Wednesday on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We will put that in your podcast feed if you miss it live. I will put that in on Thursday morning. All kinds of other great content. FC Cincinnati, they're in the middle of a playoff race as Mike has his jersey on. The Flying Lion podcast, they are covering all things FC Cincinnati. They already did a show recapping the big win on Sunday over the Columbus Crew, and hell is real. They're going to do another episode some point over Thursday, Friday, I believe, previewing their matchup against Miami and Messi, right?
That's right. Now you get Messi. So
that's a home game, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think they're the higher seed. So
and now it's a best of one, right?
Mm-hmm. Where they'll play extra time and go to.
So they play a best of three, and then it's all best of ones.
I believe so.
Soccer's crazy, man. People hate on that. I kind of love that. It's just weird. I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the year they won the Supporter Shield, so they had the best record in the regular season. They lost in the first round. So it's you never know. You get to the playoffs, and it's just who can play the best 4 or 5 games to finish her off. So it would be great to see a Reds or no, a Cincinnati team not let us down in the fall. How's that?
Speaking of Cincinnati teams that let us down in the fall, Chatterbox Bengals. That was a good segue. I think. Chatterbox Bengals must-win game, right, Mike, on Sunday against the Steelers?
Oh, yeah.
The fellas will be live for that whole game. They've been pumping up a lot of Chatterbox Bengals content nearly just about every day. Chatterbox Bengals available everywhere you podcast. If you can go leave them a 5-star review, we'd really appreciate that. They're trying to grow that show. There was I think 3 podcasts posted over the last couple days. So be sure to check out Chatterbox Bengals. Chatterbox Bearcats, UC had a big win over Dayton. Those guys did a live show on Tuesday night. That's also brand new in your podcast feed on Wednesday morning. So check out all the Chatterbox content. If you're on YouTube, well, you're there. Just keep clicking around. If you're listening in podcast, links to all those shows are in the episode notes below. And like the video, as Mike Hart encouraged me to promote, hype the video. You can hype the video on YouTube. We'd appreciate that. And we will be back again soon. Mike, appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Thank you very much. Go Reds.
Go Reds. Go get your Omaha steaks. See you later.